What's going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English. Today I have a great interview episode for you with Cara from leolistening.com. In today's episode, I think it's going to be amazing for you guys because you're going to learn how to stop using subtitles. So if you rely too heavily on subtitles at the moment, you're going to learn how you can stop relying on subtitles to understand TV shows and movies. Let's get into it. So how did you end up with leolistening.com? And did that come out of learning French and moving to France, or was that a side project, some other?
Yeah, good question. It kind of, so like I said, I've since I've moved here, because I've been here like 10 years, almost 11 years. So
Wow.
it's a long time. So I've mostly been teaching English in that time. I've done a couple of other things, and I went back to university myself and stuff as well. But like that was my main thing. And then I started getting interested in the idea of teaching online, but as far back as 2012, actually, was when I first thought I could do that. And that was actually during a time where I was working in Switzerland, because where I live is really near the Swiss border.
Oh, okay.
So we're really close to them. And and then I was sort of playing around with the idea, and it didn't really take off or anything. And then I got serious about it in 2015, and I actually quit a job that was a non-teaching job that I had for a bit, and I went back to teaching, and then I was starting to teach online and just kind of figure that out. So at the time I was like, well, people do Skype lessons.
Exactly.
A friend sent me a client saying, this lady has wanted to work with me for 3 years, but it's just never worked out. Do you want to work with her? And she was okay with doing that on Skype. So that's how I kind of got into the whole thing. And then, working with her, we kind of discovered that what was really bothering her to do with English was not being able to understand people when she was going to conferences, because she's a doctor, she's a dermatologist. And
gotcha.
So the issue wasn't like, obviously, if she goes to a conference and she's sitting in the sessions and watching presentations to do with, skin problems, obviously she understands that. You've got the slides, It's the technical terminology. A lot of the words are similar to French, it's fine. But the issue she was having was more like, you get to the breaks, it's a coffee break, it's social, people are standing around talking, you've got native speakers in the mix, and you just can't really, after a while, you kind of you can't really follow what they're talking about and what's going on.
Yeah, you get that threshold, right? As soon as there's 2, 3, 4 people, you're just
exactly.
The level of, the advanced level here required to follow everything is just too high.
So we started exploring kind of okay, what can we do about this so that, you can go to these conferences and sort of chat to people and, not be able to participate in the conversation, not because you can't speak, not because you can't get by, but because you can't actually understand what they're saying to you. So that's where I started kind of playing around with this idea of focusing on listening for that purpose in particular.
It is funny how that's almost the most crucial part of any language, right? You would imagine when most people would say speaking, and it's well, you can't really speak unless you can sort of, respond to these things by understanding what's happening. I mean, you can instigate it, but whatever answer you get back, if it's not just an order that you're giving someone, if you can't decipher it.
And I think a lot of people run into the problem when they're learning a new language and they're like, okay, I'm going to memorize these phrases so that when I get to the hotel, I can, say that I want a room or I've booked a room. And the thing is that's very one-sided, because then the person's going to respond and you're not going to.
Exactly.
And that's even if you've seen, this is the big thing, because even if you've seen the words that they're going to say in a book or something, or in a dialogue in a textbook, okay, that's nice, but that's very theoretical. And the problem is when somebody says it back to you when they're speaking in a normal way, that's when you're not going to understand words that you already know and that you've already seen and that you've maybe even already heard, but in a very carefully spoken way. And this is the big thing that I try to get across, is that it's often the words that you do know that are causing you the most problems.
Exactly, right? They disappear, you've got connected speech, you've got all sorts of different accents, and people rearrange things, so it is funny. And I guess it's no more truer for English, because it's so just not phonetic as a language, right? So you can learn these words that you read, but if you haven't heard them, you've got they could sound completely different. There could be syllables left out. The emphasis is in different places. The schwa's in there. Like it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Because like, I mean, if I were learning a new language now, what I'd probably do is really focus on listening early on and the pronunciation and making sure that I know the rule, kind of how the spelling and the sounds correspond. Yeah.
But it's true that in a language like English, there are spelling and sound correspondences. There are.
That's the worst thing, I think, for English, is that it makes sense. It's like 60, 70% of the time. So just enough for you to always think it makes sense. But then there are rules against rules against rules, and you end up screwed.
Pretty much. So, that's, and I mean, Leo is in the name of the website, because I actually always wanted, so my full name, without my middle names, but my name is Cara Leopold. So Leopold is it's my name.
Yep.
And you know what I mean? It's not like some people think it's my partner's name, but it's not. We're not married. He has a very French name that's quite difficult to pronounce.
I just thought it was Leopold, your star sign.
You thought it was what?
Your star sign.
My star sign. Oh, right, Leo. Yeah, no, mine isn't Leo. Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? Sort of astrological English. No, it's not my star sign. I want to use my surname in like the name of my website. I was looking for a way to do that, like Leo Languages or Leo, because obviously most English teachers, they put English somewhere in there, and I haven't done that. Maybe that's not so smart, but oh well. I like the way it sounds. It's working,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And it stands out. It's quite unusual as a name. So like that's what I've been talking about for the last couple of years. And last year I really got more into the whole subtitle piece, because I really am a big TV series fan and film fan, and I've had sort of disappointing experiences in the past of sort of like watching films in foreign languages and being like, I don't really know what's going on, or like either they were a bad choice for me, because like at one point I was learning Portuguese, and I had this film City of God, which was a
Jesus.
fairly, and I'm like trying to watch this, and even when I put the subtitles on, it's like, what the hell? And it's like,
so for those of you listening who don't know, this is like full of slang. They're in favelas. It's like very informal. Even when I watched that, I was just like, even with subtitles, I need to translate like every sentence. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, you have no, and it's like, why are you doing this to yourself? You're a beginner. Go find something easier that's designed, and then worry about films, later on. And even, in Spanish as well. At one point I had kind of like a B1 level in Spanish, but, films are still a bit tricky, and they're probably better watched in some cases with subtitles, or with kind of maybe subtitles for some scenes and no subtitles for other scenes, that kind of thing. Because you're still not 100% there with like, even just your knowledge of grammar and stuff like that. Sometimes you just don't have enough structures and things to really be able to understand. But there does come a point where you have to like kind of take the training wheels off your bike,
you gotta let go.
To be like, you have to be like, okay, so what is it that happens in Spanish or any other language when people talk quickly, when they join words together, when, what's going on? Because it's not just, after a while, it's not just about the words, because I've had people say to me, Cara, I switched the subtitles on with what I'm watching and I know the words, but I cannot catch them if I don't, and there we know that. That's a big
thing too, right, though, where you get used to just, you don't have to focus so intently on understanding every single word. You get the message, right? Like that happened with me in French, where when I first started and was, B1, B2, I was always fixated. I didn't hear every single word he was saying. And then it was more, I kept asking myself, but did you understand what he was saying? And it's like, yes, you can follow it, you know it. And it's like, that's the first thing, as you say, letting go and being like, I don't need to understand every single word that's said and be able to transcribe it word for word as they're speaking. I just need to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, and that, I think that works for a while, but then like as you get even more and more advanced and you're still kind of noticing some things you can't hear or can't understand, that's where you really have to dig into like what's going on. Why is it I can't understand it? What is it about the way it's pronounced that I'm not catching words that I know, or expressions that I know?
So what is Leo listening, and how will it help people learn through subtitles? How have you set the system up?
Well, so what I'm sort of doing is, so with the people I'm working with who are usually quite advanced and they have a specific TV series that they want to understand, you know, we work on just helping them to get rid of the subtitles for that series.
Yeah.
Because that's what they want to be able to do. They want to be able to watch it as far as possible without the subtitles, because they want to actually enjoy the whole experience of the series and all the visual elements. Like, you know, like we talked about Game of Thrones earlier, you know, that's not a series where you want to be kind of poring over the subtitles. You want to be like watching the action and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how we work. And we also kind of work on like, you know, giving up any sort of guilt or shame or whatever around the subtitles, because I do work with people who are very competent in English, and kind of needing the subtitles is kind of making them doubt their ability.
It feels like riding the bike with the training wheels on still in front of everyone.
Exactly. And you know, and some people are frustrated because they're like, well, I understand other stuff. I understand you.
Yeah.
I understand even like podcasts and things like this, like that's okay. But the, you know, films and TV series, they are still really, really hard. And I'm exploring the reasons why I think they are even harder than other forms of spoken English.
Why do you think that is? What have you found so far?
Yeah, well, there's different reasons. Well, I think you can already separate films and TV shows. So I would always say, like, find a TV series that you want to watch and you want to follow every week.
Exactly.
You know, or even binge watch, you know, watch back to back, because that is going to make your life so much easier.
Yeah.
Because you're going to know what's going on. You have the context. I think this is really important. I don't like to overemphasize it, but it is still important to have a clear context. And, you know, when you're seeing the same characters every week, when you're watching a story develop, like, you are going to know what's going on, like, even if there's some stuff you're missing.
Yeah.
You know, you're not catching, like, you feel a bit more reassured, you know what's going on, it's less confusing. You even hear the same expressions week in, week out, you know, like a lot of comedy series, the characters, they have their catchphrase that they always use, or, you know, so everything is just a bit more grounded in a clear context, and you're more likely to know what's going on. You know what happened last week, you know how it connects to what you're seeing now, like everything's just going to be a bit clearer in a series. And then the thing is, when you watch a film, like I use the example of sort of getting chucked out of a helicopter in the middle of nowhere. You know, sometimes they have these programs like with a guy called Bear Grylls in the UK.
Yeah, that's it.
Chucked out of a helicopter, and he has to find his way back to civilization, right?
Yeah.
And he's in the middle of nowhere. You don't know where you are. You don't know what's going on. You don't know your next move. And it's a bit like that when you start watching a film. And, you know, I say this even for, you know, French films, which I can understand, or obviously films in English. Sometimes in the first 10 minutes of a film, I really do not know what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, it's so confusing. You don't know who these characters are. You don't know who you know, even if you've kind of read the back of the DVD, or maybe you've seen the trailer, you have a rough idea of what it's about. But with films, they don't make it easy. They don't always explain really, really clearly, you know, this is the hero. This is the, you know, this is what's going to happen. And I mean, that's an artistic thing, you know, they don't want to make it obvious because then it would be boring.
Yeah.
So I think, that's an issue in a lot of films. Like, unless you're watching like a sequel to a film, you already know the characters are the same or whatever.
But I guess that emphasizes the fact that you should have watched it previously, and sort of, I guess it's a luxury for us where we can watch it in English and then potentially get it dubbed in French. But I think for me, at least, when I was learning French and Portuguese, I loved reading Harry Potter because I already knew the story. So it wasn't a matter of working out who's this, what's this, how does it fit in. It was just, now I know the story, I can just do it in French. I can do it in Portuguese. So would you recommend that they watch it with subtitles in their own language or with dubs in their own language first to get an idea and then repeat the process?
Yeah, well, I think that's really, really helpful. So it all depends kind of where you're at in your learning. So if you're more kind of intermediate, depends how you feel really. You could watch it dubbed. Like if you're not that confident, let's say, and you know there's still some bits of English that are shaky, but you're starting to get into the whole connected speech thing and trying to understand that. Yeah, you might want to watch it dubbed into your language first and then come back to it in English with or without the subtitles. And there's always options. Do you know what I mean? There's options at every single step. So it's not like it's either all subtitles or no subtitles. Like it's never about that. It's about, you know, what helps you. So it might even help you to watch the whole thing through with the subtitles in English. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the subtitles in your language because I think it's too confusing. You know, you're reading in your language, but you're sort of processing the audio in English at the same time.
Yeah, you need the whole thing in one sort of language or the other, right?
One language, yeah. And, you know, and then, you know, that'll give you the time to like, you know, then you'll get a chance to see, okay, what's going on here? Are there genuinely expressions that I don't know that are new? That's one thing. Or are you saying to yourself, that's interesting. So I know that word and it sounds a bit different to what I expect. It's good to have the subtitles to make the link sometimes. So you can watch it like that. And then you could even come back a third time and, you know, take the subtitles off and see what you remember or what you've forgotten or what is still hard to catch. Because this is the worst thing for me is when students, you know, even when I go through a clip with them and I explain everything and they've got the subtitles or the transcript and they're like, I still can't hear that. Like some stuff, it's going to come, but it doesn't always come straight away. Even
so is the key here, though, no matter what you're watching, repetition? You can't just go I watched it once and then I got bored and then I go to the next thing.
I think it's repetition and it's also like just doing some work.
The study.
Because it's very tempting with sort of films and shows and the whole idea of passive listening. Yeah. That you're just going to like...
absorb and use it.
Absorb and it's just like going to magically, like we all want the magic solution to language learning. We all think that if we just did this, it would work. Or like if I just moved to the country. Now, I mean, I did that and I realize now I probably didn't have to. I mean, I don't regret it. I'm very happy with my choice because I like living here. But at the same time, with other languages now, I'm like, I can't really be bothered to improve my Spanish because I'd have to move to Spain if I really wanted to get really good. And that's just an excuse. The reality is I'm not actually that motivated to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I wanted to have maybe not the level I've got in French, but certainly a better level in Spanish, there are ways I can do it without having to go to Spain.
Well, and that's it. I did that with French. I mean, my French is a bit rusty now, but I got to a very high level from just at home. I'd been there once when I was 16. Hadn't studied for 10 years, picked it up again, and just through studying, like I was watching TV series that I liked, but actually writing down words, expressions that I didn't know, learning them, not just doing the passive thing. And that's how I really took off, I felt, because I was putting in the time, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. And
amazing.
I think that kind of stuff, you can do that anywhere in the world with the internet now, and it can totally dominate people who are immersed in that culture, but not exposing them to the equivalent amount of time with native speakers or what. Like there are plenty of people who don't make the most of these opportunities when they're even in the country, right? So
like even for me it was difficult at first because I was teaching English. All my colleagues were English teachers, and even if they were French, their English was like way better than my French. I thought my French was quite good because I could pretty much say what I wanted to say. It's just that it wasn't very idiomatic and there were still some lingering mistakes.
It's always the path of least resistance, right? Even if they don't realise, they'll just go, this is the one that we can both communicate in easier.
Exactly. So like, and that happens to a lot of people when they go abroad. They end up in that kind of like expat community where because it is hard to immerse yourself in local culture. So I mean, there's absolutely no reason. And I think your example of living in Australia where you're so just geographically isolated. Yeah. Like you can't just, the nearest French speaking country to you.
The fortunate thing for me, that you'd have places like
Tahiti, French Polynesia.
Exactly. You'd have like Vanuatu or whatever, but you'd never meet people from there. But the good thing, I guess, was I was living in Melbourne and knew a lot of French people and there were language meetups, so I could, so long as I actively pushed myself, I could use it with native speakers. But if I sat on my ass every day, it wouldn't happen. You know, just the same as if I was in the country sitting on my butt or surrounded by English speakers, that it doesn't happen on its own, I guess is the key.
It doesn't happen on its own. And it's tempting to sort of be like, well, I'll just immerse myself. And it's like, even when you're a little kid, you know, you got 3 years of just full on contact with your parents or caregivers, you know, and they are communicating with you all the time, simplifying the message. Like, you know, it's designed so that you learn the language.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what we say, there's probably a bit of, you know, neural wiring or priming for language that helps us. But, you know, ultimately you get a lot of help when you're a little kid and you're really encouraged to speak. And if you don't speak, you don't get the things you want. So, like, you've got that motivation.
But the funny thing is, too, with them, right, they're doing passive listening for 2 years before they start speaking, and it's not like they just suddenly start speaking fluently. They start speaking one word at a time, They have to...
Even little babies, they make, before they make their first word, they do this thing called, what's it called, reduplicated babbling or something, or
where they working their mouth out.
They're not saying dada, they are just like, they're playing around with different sounds. And there is actually a period, apparently, when you're a baby, where you're like playing around with, you can make all the sounds in the world.
Yes.
And then you start narrowing down to the range of sounds you need for the language that you're hearing. I just think it's amazing.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
When you're a baby, you're like in linguistic genius. Like, you could pronounce anything.
I know.
And then you kind of like...
It's incredibly hard work afterwards. So what would you say if I came to you and I said, okay, I'm moving to Australia, or I've just moved to Australia. What do you suggest I do if I'm intermediate to advanced level in English and I want to use TV series or movies with subtitles, or, you know, ultimately get rid of the subtitles? What advice would you have for them for how to go about doing that? And obviously how Leo listening can help them do that. Okay,
so I would start off with like picking sort of one series you want to follow, because some people are kind of going around with the logic of like, well, I want to watch all these series, or like, one of these series is going to be easier than all the others. And ultimately, like, they're all going to have their difficulties. If they are normal TV series designed for native speakers of the language, they're all going to have some difficulty somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, so just pick one that you really want to watch and that you're really interested in and that will motivate you to watch it. And then I think after, it kind of depends on how you want to use it, because you can use the series in different ways. Because you could say, right, I'm going to switch the subtitles on for this one, but I'm going to kind of use it to kind of mine it for new language.
Exactly.
So I'm going to write down new expressions, or I'm going to practice pronouncing them. So I'm going to replay sections and try and kind of copy the way people are speaking. And it's really good when you have that visual element as well, because you've got, you know, you can watch their sort of lip movements or gestures. Then if you're working more on the listening piece, what I'd sort of prefer people to do is, you know, kind of watch without subtitles initially, try and get what's going on, kind of self-evaluate as well to say, you know, how much can I catch? Because for me, kind of the magic number is if you feel that you're getting about 80% of what you hear without the subtitles, for me, that's a sign that you are good to go. Like, you can keep them off. The other 20%, it's going to be unknown expressions. It's going to be cultural things that you just don't know. Either you don't worry about them, or if it really bothers you, you go and ask someone about them. And then a bit of, did I mention unknown vocabulary? Yeah, that would be, the rest is going to be maybe unknown, or a really weird pronunciation of something, or, you know, something, things that aren't important. And then once you've got 80%, you can just use all the visual elements to give you the remaining 20%.
And so how do you turn it up though, and start, like if you do get to that point where it's 80% or more, how do you recommend getting to the next level? Should you go out and actively look for things that are harder, or just find a new series, repeat the process?
I would start repeating the process. You could also once you're at that level, then you can really start using the series to kind of enrich your English. So at that point, you might want to switch on the subtitles again, because you're like, ooh, that sounds like a new expression. I want to learn how to use that. I'm going to take that and I'm going to test using it in the real world.
Exactly.
I'm going to try and figure out what it means from the context. And I interviewed another teacher a couple of weeks ago. I interviewed Trisha from Vagabond English, who is big on reading in English and then also journaling. So she was talking about how to do that for TV series, and her idea was, you could just take an expression and then just decide, right, I'm going to journal a little story with this expression, or I'm going to, just practice writing something, or I'm going to take what happened in this scene in the series and I'm going to predict what's going to come next, or I'm going to write just something based
off. That pairs really well, right, with the listening aspect, because you're doing the passive thing and then you're doing the active thing, creating with the stuff that you've just learned.
But there's loads of other ideas as well for creation. Like, again, last year I interviewed Anne-Marie from Speak Confident English, and we were talking about this idea of like listening to a podcast and listening to it with a friend. So like you kind of both go off and listen to it, and then you meet up and you have a chat about it.
Yeah.
And you could so do that with TV series, and it's what happens in the real world. Like if you go on Facebook, I'm in various groups for different TV series. So the fans are in the group and they're discussing the series, they're discussing the actors, what they're up to. So there is another example of how you can take what you're doing on your own and what could end up being a bit passive if you're not careful, and making it something really active where you then use, the language that you've seen, and where you can also ask questions. I'd be happy to help somebody in a film or TV series group who's like, can you tell me what this means? Or I didn't really understand what was going on. There's so much potential for that kind of like all over the internet, because there's fans of series discussing things all day long, like, especially for series like Game of Thrones, where everybody's like, what's going to happen? There's so much potential there for like, doing creative writing, discussing, meeting people who are fans. Like there's just so much potential.
And so what length of time does this process usually take, from then going from, I guess, having doing okay, they can follow it as long as the subtitles are on there. How long does it take for them to sort of go training wheels free and remove the subtitles usually?
Well, with the clients that I've worked with, we get going. The idea is we do it in 4 weeks. But I've had people that I've worked with. I had one person who, after a week, she was like, do you know what? Saturday night, I watched the series without the subtitles and I felt good. Wow. I didn't get everything, but now I realize that I can use the actors' lip movements and other elements, and it's fine. But I think, again, it comes back to people maybe being too hard on themselves or expecting too much of themselves. And obviously we all want to go for like continual improvement, but listening takes a long time to doing proactive things and not just kind of passively listening. It still takes a long time to figure out. So I think some people, it's just, there is that. I was saying that with listening, obviously you do have to do practical, and it does take time to figure out. But at the same time, for some people, there's just the confidence piece that's missing.
And they just need that little push to let go and give it a go. Sometimes it is just a matter of they just need to be told or taught to let go and just try it. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can do this. It's not that bad.
It's not that bad. And I'm getting them to do practical things like try to pronounce things like the character said them, because that's going to reinforce your listening, even if you're not going to say that in real life. And, and then that gets the ear training in. But then there's also just the confidence piece, I think, as well, is a big one. So it can go quite quickly. I've sort of surprised myself. But sometimes we also have to accept that, like, I was working with someone else on True Detective, where you've got Matthew McConaughey is one of the actors.
Yes, yeah.
So he, amazing actor, but he's Texan, I think. So already that's kind of a difficult accent from the US, because it's not a standard one, and he's just somebody who doesn't articulate very clearly, and his character
is mumbling.
So in True Detective, I was just like, if you want to put the subtitles on for his scenes, like, I'm not going to blame you. There's no judgment here, because he's really hard to understand.
Yeah.
Like, there's some situations where, like, it's really not your fault. I think that's important to.
Natives have that, right? I remember watching Billy Connolly, the comedian from Scotland, and having to ask my dad or watch with subtitles because I didn't understand his accent. And I was a native speaker who was in my, early 20s. So
it's not always like your fault. That's a big thing of what I'm trying to help people with, and you have to judge, you have to kind of judge for yourself where you're at. If you can only catch 50% of something, there's probably a lot more going on than just it's a mixture of listening problems, not knowing enough English, and other things going on. And that can obviously be fixed, but you have to kind of figure out where you are. And most people never stop to take the time to actually assess what do they know, what they don't know. They just kind of listen and hope that it will all fall into place one day.
Exactly. They're doing it blind, right? But that's the long way.
That's it. And the way a lot of learning is to do with feedback and reflection.
Exactly.
Feedback, reflection, and that's how you progress. But if you're not getting either of those, well, you're kind of just stuck.
Well, this was one quick anecdote before we finish up. This happened with me doing jiu-jitsu, right? So jiu-jitsu is this martial art where it's very complicated. You're effectively wrestling, and there's submission holds, and you would tend to have two kinds of people that would show up to class. There'd be the kind of person who would just wing it, and he didn't give a shit about anyone else, what they thought. He didn't ask, why did you get me? Why did you submit me? What did I do wrong? He would just show up. He'd show up all the time, every day. But he never asked for feedback. He never asked, what am I doing wrong? He never looked for his mistakes. And then there would be the other guy who would come in, and every time he was caught, he got submitted, some sort of mistake obviously happened. He asked, he adjusted, and he fixed it, and he skyrocketed with his skill level. And so I think that's the kind of thing with English. A lot of people just go, well, I just need exposure, so I just go all the time. And I use it all the time, but if you're not trying to actively improve your errors and fix the bits that you're weakest at, there needs to be that active process involved. Otherwise it's a lot longer to get to the top, right? Yeah,
exactly. Even though you're on the right track because you're motivated to immerse yourself, but you do need to take a step back as well, and have a think about.
So
that's how we learn.
Where can people get a hold of you?
So they can come to the website. So the website address is a bit annoying because it's Leo and then there's a little hyphen and then listening.com. But I mean, if you type
it'll be linked in the transcript, guys, and on the website, so you'll be able to find it, or below in the description if this is on YouTube. So
exactly. If this is a video, just go under the video. So I have my website, and then I am on Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest as well for people who like visual things. So those are the main places where people can find me.
Brilliant. Well, get on it, guys. If you like watching TV series and you want to get subtitle free, go and harass Cara at Leah Listening for some tuition, and within 4 weeks, hopefully you'll be seeing some really good results. So thank you so much, Cara, for coming on the podcast today. It was lovely.
Thanks, Pete.
My pleasure. See you guys. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Remember, if you would like to see the first part of this interview, make sure that you click the card up here. Go and check it out, where she talks about French culture, learning French, and moving to France. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon if you would like to stay up to date with all the new episodes coming out on this channel every week. Guys, thank you so much for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya!